We are going to disassemble this Sony Vaio laptop. Now, I will tell you that my first impression of Vaio, and I almost bought one once, my bank got offline and wouldn't recognize my card, so I couldn't pay for the thing, so I didn't take it home, and I ended up never getting one, and in many ways I'm glad I didn't. My impression has been that they're a lot of dollar for the performance that you get. Now, part of that may be because of the way it's constructed. And this is a cheap video because I've already taken this apart once. Not as completely as I intend to now, but I have taken at least part of it apart, so I know what's going on. Every manufacturer's laptop is a little different. There's nothing standard about them. What you usually can expect is that on the bottom you're going to find let me unlock the battery here and I can release it and take the battery out. My guess is the battery's no good. I got this computer along with a stack of others from a nephew who used to fix computers at his job, and I'm guessing these are machines that got rejected. And I was able to boot one of them because I had a power supply that fit it. I found another one of a similar make that wouldn't boot, but I could hear the fan running. And I had a computer that someone had given me of the other brand that make had bought, but it was almost exactly the same case, just different colors and stuff, different brand name on it. But I was able to take the fan out of it and put it in the one that somebody had given me, so that I had now a working computer. I had it on the other day for quite a while, and did some things with it, got the operating system updated as much as it would, and so on. Most laptops will have two ports on the bottom, and one of them will be for the hard drive. That's this port on this Vaio, and the arrow says that I need to push it that way to get it open. Yeah, there it goes. There we go. So that plate comes off, and there is the 2.5-inch parallel ATA hard drive. And there's enough space here, will just slide straight out like that. There were 3 screws in this when I first took this apart to hold this drive in, and I went to put it back together and the screws disappeared, and I have not been able to find them. So I have no idea where they got off to. But and I do have an interface somewhere where I can plug this drive in. Let me just go ahead and get it out of this case. This happens to be a Travel Star Hitachi, yeah. So I could see what's on this drive by putting it into that little case, and it has a USB interface. I could plug it into any computer and read the hard drive. I might do that at some point. The other port that's often on the bottom of laptops is the memory port, and that'll be this one on this particular computer. And that's going to be the same thing. Push it away, and it'll come loose. And there's the memory. And this has 2 1 gigabyte chips. So that identifies this as a, well, it should be a pre-Windows 7 computer. And in fact, the sticker on it here says XP Home Edition. So 2 gigabytes was pretty good for XP. Once you got to 7, they really recommended 4 gigabytes of RAM. So there we go, 2 gigabytes of RAM. And they faced each other, or one was upside down because it had the notch in the same spot there. So next we go about taking out all the rest of the screws. Now, different computers do different things. I've seen computers where you take out all the screws, on some of the screws on the bottom that would be marked for the keyboard. And once you got the keyboard screws out, then you could turn the computer over, open the case, and lift the back of the keyboard up. And I'm going to put these over here in that little tray so they don't get lost. And then the keyboard would move forward a little bit. There'd be little tabs on the near side that would come up and would allow you to take the keyboard completely out of the machine, which you would have to do because under the keyboard there would be more screws holding the top and bottom of the main case together. This one does not do that. Like I say, I've already had this apart, so I know that when I get these screws on the outside off, I can take this bottom off. Now, the one thing that might make this machine worth the extra moolah is that this is not your standard base. This is not, you know, most of them are made of like Lexan or some other kind of plastic. And this is not. It is made out of sheet metal and die cast. Now, when I was a kid, my dad used to call die cast pot metal, indicating that it was cheap and not worth much. And there are die cast processes where the die cast is kind of brittle and doesn't hold up well. When I worked at Crossman Air Gun, they had some die cast parts. They didn't do die cast at their factory. They had a factory at a nearby town do their die cast for them. So you get those parts in and then put the rest together. So, looking around to make sure I got all these screws loose. Some are down deep, so I won't be able to pull them out. So I'm going to have to turn this over. Now, there's a little port right here on this, and that looks like it's a docking port. You couldn't just dock it. You'd have to reach down here and push it out of the way and then dock it, and then manually close it when you're done. Not real convenient for docking, I wouldn't think. Now, if I turn this up, most of those screws should fall out. And now I can reach here. Well, it looks like 4 of them came out.
I think I got more than 4 of them loose, but yeah, here's one that didn't come out. Looks like I'm making this. No, that one's loose now anyway. That didn't get that one. Okay, should be able to get more screws to fall out. There. And no, I got at least 3 more out. Now let's see.
Now, real computer technicians use a special plastic tool for popping cases open, because sometimes they snap in place and you have to kind of pry them loose. So I found this piece that came with I can't tell. Is there a screw down in there? They fixed my eyes when I had cataract surgery, and they fixed my distance vision and ruined my close-up vision. As you can see, I'm wearing glasses. These are reading glasses. Yeah, I think this is going to come loose now. There's a little fan port cover here that snaps in place. That comes off. And then this comes off. And as you can hear, that is sheet metal. And then there are some die cast parts added to it. At least it looks to me like it's of course the whole thing might be die cast. Yeah, I'm beginning to think this whole thing is die cast because it's shaped like that and I don't see any joinery. So that's probably a completely die cast part, and they've used a better quality of the material there. So that could be why, one of the reasons why the Vaios cost so much more is that they went to the trouble to get a good quality of die cast, made an entire die cast base there. So now we can see the interior parts, and there is a cord here. This cord comes from the power port and goes to a spot on the motherboard where the power would be input, so we can take that off. This is the optical drive. Modern computers generally don't carry optical drives because you can download most of your software off the internet, so they come with all your internet connections options, usually at least Wi-Fi, but usually Wi-Fi and wired networking. I think this one has, yes, this one does have a wired networking port. I think there's 3 screws here that hold this optical drive in place. Now, what did I do with that other optical drive screw? Oh, I put it way over there in the corner. Alright, so let's put these over there in that corner. If I was a really astute technician, I would have a segmented bin to put the screws in, so I could keep the screws separate from where, you know, these screws came from here, these screws came from there, keep them all separate. So there's the optical drive out, and this is a, well, guess what? Sony made it, huh? Amazing enough. Right, there's a Wi-Fi card on this. With most laptops, the Wi-Fi cables, the antenna cables, come out of the screen. But this one, the cables just come up off the motherboard, right down there. And these essentially just pop straight up off. It's a little trickier to get them back on because they have to get lined up just right and then fit them down. And this particular Wi-Fi interface is just like the in-memory interface. In fact, well, no, not just like. It's got a notch there, but it's way off on one side. This is different from most of the Wi-Fi cards that I have seen. I think that may be a proprietary Sony interface for the Wi-Fi, so it'd be hard to get just any Wi-Fi card to fit on there. Now, I've gotten this power cord loose. There's a memory stick board here that's held on with a couple of screws. And that, as I recall, has just a pressed down connection socket on it. So it fits down onto a socket on the motherboard. And let me pull this straight up and you can see, yeah, right there. So that's where it is, and it fits into that socket right there. And let's fit those screws down into those holes so we'll know this is where those screws came from. Okay, there are 2 cables that come over here from this little piece, and that is, this one is old enough that it actually has a phone modem port and then the wired networking port. And those 2 wires come together over here, and at least the networking port plugs in right here, straight down. Okay, so the phone modem, yes, that plugs into a little separate board again. That is the phone modem on this computer. So if you had a dial-up connection, you could use the RJ9 plug at the back of the computer to plug it directly into your phone line. And it looks like this has a 2-pin connector to it. Yeah. So there's the modem. Tiny little board. when modems first came out, they came in boxes that were great big huge things. All that. Okay, so this area is pretty clear. There is a speaker there. There's probably a speaker over here too, underneath where the fan is there. There's a single screw here that holds a little metal piece in place that holds this power connector down. So let's just set that screw over there. This is a little tricky to get loose because it fits up. There's a little notch in the plastic there that this thing fits over. So there's a hole in the plastic that, in the metal brace here that fits over that little notch in the plastic, or a little tab, I suppose, in the plastic. And this thing's not wanting to come loose. And I've had it loose, so I know it does come loose. It's just a trick to get it loose from that. There we go. At least it wasn't a screw big enough to find and pick up. Now there's the screw, and that's probably one of the screws, yeah, from the case that I didn't realize had dropped. So now this piece will come right up out of there. That's the power connector. I don't have a power supply for this, so I couldn't test it if I wanted to. So let's see. There's a couple of connectors here. Now, one of these, let's see. I don't see where the display connects yet. And that's another thing with laptops. Every laptop maker uses their own, and even between models, they'll have their own unique connector. So you can't just get a generic display and plug it in on the motherboard, because it's all unique, proprietary, I guess is the term for that. So I got the fan unplugged. There's the cable here. I'm not sure. That might be power for the backlight display. Now there's a large heatsink here. This is the CPU, but this heatsink is probably for the chipset. So let's get these screws loose and see. Now, if you were going to do this in real life, you would want to have some heatsink paste around, you know, with the computer you wanted to refire, because you break that heatsink seal and you really need to reset it. There, that pretty much just came straight up. All right, and there is a chip. That looks like that's about the only chip that heatsink was protecting. So a big heatsink for a single chip. And I guess that's the heatsink pad for it. So, another thing that they like to do, which is miserable, is they like to put down tape. They like to tape things down. And tape is great for cable management, but then if you're a cheap guy like me and you're removing these things, then the sticky gets gummed up and it doesn't want to stick down as well when you go to put it back together. There, those cables are out of the way. And now we'll take loose the CPU heatsink. And I'm looking to see if that is a ZIF socket, a zero insertion force socket. If it is, it'll make it easy to lift the CPU off the motherboard once we get the heatsink off here. And it looks like this is 4 screws for this. There, so there's the heatsink fan combination, and when I replaced the fan on that computer that somebody had given to me, I actually had to take the fan itself loose from the heatsink, because the heatsink in the machine where the fan was working was different from the heatsink in the computer I had, but the fan was the same and the screws were in the same place. I could take screws out of that. Now, oh yes, this is a zip socket, but I have to have a flat blade to turn it. They do that with laptops because the little handle is not convenient. Okay, turn it. I guess there. Okay, there's a pointer on it. So there's the CPU. Okay. Now for the motherboard itself. And I don't know how this motherboard connects to the display or the keyboard. A lot of times there's those little flat ribbon cables, and I haven't gone deep enough in this to see how that's done, so this will be a learning experience. Yeah. I put flat plate on there to open up that CPU socket, so I have to put the Phillips back on. Now it would be really smart of me to take a picture so I could see where the screws go and where the screws do not go, because you don't want to put screws in ports that the screw is used to hold the case on, because then you can't put the case screw through. And I have had that problem in the past. Put a screw in the wrong place and then had to open it all up again and take that screw out and find out where it did go.
I don't think that battery connector is, the screw into the battery connector is holding the motherboard of the case. I might be wrong. I might have to go get that in a minute, but for now we'll leave that out.
Okay, feels like it is maybe. I think there's a screw missing there, because I think there's supposed to be, yeah. Don't have good enough light to see down in there. It'd be nice to be able to get up in there and to release those ribbon cable. Or sometimes you can just pull them out. But it's nice, but you got to know how they work, and the different ones work differently. I think I'm just going to gently slide that out. If it'll slide. It's not wanting to. Some of those connectors have a little piece that slides out this way and releases the pressure on the cable. Others have a little flap that kind of hinges up. And I can't tell which type I'm looking at here. But I am pretty sure that the one thing that's really giving me trouble down there is the display connector. Yeah. Oh, wow. That did make a big difference. And so, yeah, I'm sure that's the cable for the display. So now maybe I can see this keyboard cable connector well enough to figure out how it works. Okay, oh, there we go. That slid out. This piece of tape came loose. And there, after all that work, is the motherboard out and free. So that's a PCMCIA slot there. That was fairly common on older laptops. From around the turn of the century, or shortly thereafter, I guess. Or is that one of those? Oh, that's one of those pop-ups. Okay. So this has an example. See, there's a little hinge thing that pops up, and this one has a little slider on it. And when you fit the cable in, you get it all the way in, and you push that back in, and it clamps down onto the cable and secures the electrical and mechanical connections for it. Sony M503-M/B revision 1.0. The keyboard may be, and it looks like it kind of is, it looks like they made plastic studs on it and pushed the plastic studs through holes in this upper case and then melted them down so that the keyboard is not a readily replaceable device. Well, that's a bummer, because you would think with this expensive of a laptop that you know, replaceable things would in fact be replaceable. I did work on getting to the display. There are 4 screws in the display. They're underneath sticky things, and whoever worked on this before probably didn't know about the hidden screws and tried to get this cover off, because on some laptops the covers are entirely press fit. They snap in place, and if you snap them in the right way, they come right off. They worked on this, and when I got to it, it was already cracked, and just trying to get the thing off, I finished the cracking process, and it completely broke. Yeah, so, come on, I think that's out. I think it's just stuck.
Now, although this display bezel, I guess you'd call it, does have screws, it also snaps in place. So we're going to have to try to undo the snapping.
And with most of them, if you start from the display side and pull that up, it angles the tabs in the back away from their hole, and they'll come loose. Yeah, it's cracked there, but that was cracked the first time I did it, so that's not new. And I think one of the reasons these things sometimes are really hard to get open is that the makers like to glue the bottom of the bezel down. Yeah, see there, that's completely broken. And see, somehow that provides better security for something. For what, I don't know, but okay, that's that side loose. There we go. Now the display itself is a typical flat screen display, and it is held in place with, it's hard to say how many screws. I think these 2 screws are attaching the cover and display to the main case. Most displays, there's the display and the electronics that work the display, and most displays are LCD or liquid crystal displays, so they don't actually generate light. They put a light behind the liquid crystal array, and then the liquid crystals change to let the light through in different colors and intensities. And so then you have to have the light, and they do have LED backlights now, but I think the old ones were a form of fluorescent, and they had a high voltage power supply, which on this unit is in a little motherboard or a little circuit board right there at the base of the display. Okay, so the connection for the display comes here, but then it actually goes up there, and let's see, but then the high voltage unit over here has two connections. Yeah, caution, high voltage. And I'm not sure how high the voltage is. It's probably like 2,000 to 4,000 volts, I would guess. But that's, you know, roughly 20 times the voltage of house current. So yeah, it's and you know, they're building that up. Okay, I see that's held down with, is it? Yeah, I think that little circuit board's held down with screws. Yeah, it just looks like it's moving because the plastic above it is moving. So, wow, that is one long display cable. Most laptops are built with a display cable that's like 2 or 3 inches long. This one goes in here and goes way over to here, so that's like 9 inches there, plus whatever it takes to get through the hinge here and up to the back of this display. And this is all taped down, and something tells me that's not going to be, let's see if I can pull that tape loose, but something, it's ruining the sticky on the, it just slides straight back like that. So there's that. And then if you take this loose down here, that tape, then you've got a completely free display. And these cables would go to the backlight, the probably fluorescent backlight. And then this connection here would be of the data going to the display controller that would control the LCD on it. And yeah, there's a framework around this. The framework could be taken loose because there's screws here holding that to the display case. Now, this is probably a workable display. The only thing is there's no standards to it. So, you know, this connection is probably unique, and you'd have to get diagrams and a pinout to figure out. Otherwise, you might be able to use this display somewhere where you needed a display, and you wouldn't have to have the whole laptop working. And my guess is, if you were able to power it up, this display would work, even if the computer was toast. So, oh, that, I can't tell. That feels like it might be the same material as that base, so that's a die-cast cover there as well. So, and they've got a lot of metal shielding in here too, of pretty thin stainless. I get that might be aluminum. So there you have it. We've disassembled it. I don't know if I'll ever bother to put it back together. We're going to leave this at that, and if I ever put this back together, I ever put it back together, and if I don't, so what? It probably didn't work to begin with.